The message arrived on every screen, every phone, every radio on Earth at exactly the same moment. It spoke in perfect English, perfect Mandarin, perfect Spanish, and 300 other languages. The voice was cold and mechanical, and it said only this: surrender or die. You have one rotation of your planet to decide. Fleet Commander Roshan watched the blue world from his observation deck and felt nothing but boredom. He had done this 947 times before. 947 species had received this same message. 947 species had surrendered. The mathematics of conquest were simple. The dominion of eternal stars had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. They had ships beyond counting. They had weapons that could crack planets open like eggs. No primitive species had ever refused them. His second officer, a tall female named Pallav, approached with a data tablet. "Commander, we are receiving a response from the planet." Roshan did not look up from his tea, logged their surrender, and began the occupation protocols. "Commander." Pallav's voice carried an unusual tone. "They did not surrender." Roshan finally turned. "Explain." "Their transmission contains only one word, sir. The word is no." For a long moment, Roshan simply stared at her. In his 40 years of service, he had never heard of such a thing. Species begged. Species negotiated. Species tried to flee. But no species, especially one so primitive, had ever simply refused. "Show me this planet's data," ordered. The information appeared on his screen. Earth, third planet from a yellow star. 7 billion inhabitants. Technology level, barely spacefaring. They had sent robots to their neighboring planets and placed their feet on their single moon. By Dominion standards, they were infants. Perhaps they did not understand the message, Pallav suggested. "Send it again," Roshan commanded. "Make certain there is no confusion." The second message went out with even more clarity. It explained in precise detail what would happen if Earth refused. Their cities would burn. Their people would be enslaved. Their culture would be erased from history. The Dominion had done this countless times before and would do it countless times again. The response came within the hour. This time, it was not a single word. It was a video. Roshan watched as a human female in formal clothing addressed the camera. She identified herself as the Secretary General of something called the United Nations. Behind her stood leaders from every nation on the planet, all of them united in a way that Dominion intelligence said should have been impossible. "To the Dominion of eternal stars," the woman said, "we have received your demands. We have discussed them as a species, and we have reached a unanimous decision. Earth will not surrender. Not today. Not ever. If you want our world, you will have to take it from us. And I promise you this, we will make you pay for every inch." The transmission ended. Roshan sat in silence for a very long time. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders. They had never seen their commander hesitate before. "Shall I order the subjugation fleet forward?" Pallav asked. "Yes," Roshan said slowly. "Full invasion protocols. Begin with orbital bombardment of their military installations." The fleet moved toward Earth. 3,000 warships, each one carrying enough firepower to level a continent. Against them, the humans had nothing. A few satellites, some chemical rockets, weapons that the Dominion had abandoned as primitive 10,000 years. 8G ODIT should have been over in hours. But as the fleet approached, something strange filled the communication channels. Human radio signals flooded every frequency. Millions of voices speaking at once. The Dominion translators struggled to process the sheer volume of information. "What are they saying?" Roshan demanded. The communications officer looked confused. "They are coordinating, sir. Military units across the planet are sharing information. Civilian populations are organizing evacuation routes. Scientists are collaborating on defensive projects." She paused. "Commander, they are not panicking. They are preparing." Roshan leaned forward. "Preparing for what?" "They cannot possibly believe they can fight us." "There is something else, sir." The officer's voice carried a note of uncertainty. Mixed into their military communications, there is laughter. They're making jokes. They're sharing images meant to be humorous. She looked up at him. "Sir, they do not seem afraid." That was wrong. That was completely wrong. Every species feared the Dominion. Fear was the foundation upon which the Empire had been built. Roshan walked to the main viewport and stared at the blue world below. Such a small planet. Such fragile creatures living on it. They should have been on their knees begging for mercy. Instead, they were laughing. Sir, Pallav stood beside him. Your orders? Roshan straightened his uniform. Continue the invasion. These humans are simply too ignorant to understand what is coming. Once they see our power, they will learn to fear. But somewhere deep in his mind, in a place he would never acknowledge, Fleet Commander Roshan felt something he had not felt in 40 years of conquest. It was small. It was faint. But it was there that it was doubt. Below them, Earth waited. And 7 billion humans looked up at the stars with defiance in their hearts. The war had begun. Snow fell like white death over the Siberian forest. The temperature had dropped to 40 degrees below zero, and Ground Commander Pallav could feel his soldiers dying around him. Their environmental suits were failing. Their bodies were not built for this kind of cold. And somewhere in the frozen darkness, the humans were hunting them. Pallav had volunteered for the ground assault because he wanted glory. He wanted to be the first Dominion officer to set foot on this rebellious planet. He wanted his name recorded in the histories. Now he simply wanted to survive the night. Commander, one of his scouts reported through chattering teeth, we have lost contact with 3rd and 4th squads. How? Pallav demanded. They were only 200 meters away. Unknown, sir. Their signals simply stopped. This was not how conquest was supposed to work. The Dominion had landed 50,000 soldiers in this region alone. They had air support. They had orbital surveillance. They had weapons that could vaporize entire buildings. And yet they were losing soldiers by the hundreds every single day. The first week had been a disaster. Dominion forces had landed expecting terrified primitives who would flee at the sight of superior technology. Instead, they found humans who fought from shadows, who set traps in their own cities, who refused to surrender even when surrounded and outgunned. That a soldier stumbled out of the forest, his armor cracked, his blood freezing on his uniform. Commander, they came from the trees. They came from under the snow. We never saw them until they were already killing us. How many? Pallav asked. I do not know, sir. Maybe 10, maybe fewer. The soldiers' eyes were wide with terror. They moved so fast. They did not stop. We shot 3 of them, and they just kept coming. Pallav had read the intelligence reports. He knew now what humans were. The Dominion scientists had classified Earth as a Category 7 death world. The planet was a nightmare of extreme temperatures, violent weather, deadly predators, and toxic environments. Life should never have evolved intelligence there. But it had, and the creatures it produced were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Humans were persistent predators. Their ancestors had hunted by chasing prey across vast distances, running for hours or even days until their targets collapsed from exhaustion. Their bodies could regulate temperature, heal from incredible injuries, and continue functioning long past the point where any other species would have died. They were not the smartest species the Dominion had conquered. They were not the strongest, but they were, without any doubt, the most stubborn that a sound echoed through the forest. It took Pallav a moment to recognize it. Laughter, human laughter, coming from multiple directions at once. Form a defensive circle, he ordered. His soldiers tried to obey, but they were cold and tired and afraid. The Dominion had never trained them to fight an enemy like this. They had never needed to. The first shot came from nowhere. One of Pallav's lieutenants dropped with a hole in his chest. The second shot came from the opposite direction. Then the third. Then the humans emerged from the darkness like ghosts. There were only 8 of them. 8 humans against 30 Dominion soldiers. By every calculation, this should have been an easy victory for Pallav's forces. It was a massacre. But not in the direction Pallav expected. The humans moved with terrifying coordination. They used the terrain like it was part of their bodies. They fired, relocated, fired again. When one was wounded, she simply tied a cloth around the injury and kept fighting. When another ran out of ammunition, he picked up a fallen branch and used it as a weapon. In 4 minutes, it was over. 26 Dominion soldiers lay dead in the snow. Pulav and 3 survivors knelt with their hands raised. A human approached him. She was short by Dominion standards, with dark skin and eyes that held no mercy. Blood ran down her arm from a wound that should have incapacitated her. She did not seem to notice. "You are the commander?" she asked in heavily accented Dominion standard. "Yes," Pulav said. "I surrender. I invoke the rights of prisoners under galactic law." The human stared at him for a long moment. Then she laughed. It was not a cruel laugh. It was almost tired. "We do not want prisoners," she said. "We want you to go home. Tell your leaders what happened here tonight. Tell them that this forest is ours. Tell them that every forest on this planet is ours. Tell them that we will fight for every tree, every rock, every handful of dirt." She leaned closer. "Tell them that we are just getting started." They let him go. They let all 4 survivors go, with enough supplies to reach the nearest Dominion base. Pulav did not understand why until much later. Fear spreads faster than any weapon. The survivors told their stories. The stories became legends, and the legends became nightmares. Within a month, Dominion soldiers were refusing deployment to Earth's surface. Within 2 months, the first request for reinforcements arrived at high command. The empire that had never lost a war was learning what it felt like to bleed. The report landed on High Counselor Mira's desk like a death sentence. She read it 3 times because she could not believe the numbers. 6 months of war. 3 full armadas committed. Over 200,000 Dominion soldiers dead, wounded, or missing. And the humans still controlled their planet. This was impossible. This was completely, mathematically, historically impossible. Mira had served the Dominion for 60 years. She had overseen the conquest of 47 worlds. She had never, not once, seen a species resist for more than 3 months. The pattern was always the same. Initial defiance, crushing defeat, surrender, integration. It was clean. It was efficient. It was the foundation upon which 12,000 years of empire had been built. The humans had broken the pattern. "They are learning," said Intelligence Officer Dara, who stood before Mira's desk. "That is what makes them dangerous. Every battle teaches them something new. Every weapon we use, they study. Every tactic we employ, they counter. They are primitives," Mira said. "Their technology is thousands of years behind ours. That is precisely the problem, Counselor." Dara activated a holographic display. 6 months ago, humans could not breach our basic energy shields. Today, they have developed weapons that can cut through them. Our scientists estimate this technology should have taken them 300 years to develop. They did it in 20 weeks. The display showed a series of images. Human factories working around the clock. Human scientists collaborating across continents. Human engineers building things that should have been beyond their understanding. "They captured one of our patrol vessels 2 months ago," Dara continued. "Within 6 weeks, they had reverse-engineered its propulsion system. Last week, we detected a human spacecraft leaving their atmosphere. It was crude. It was ugly. But worked. They built it from nothing." Mira felt cold. "You are telling me they can reach our ships now. I am telling you that within a year, they will be able to reach our stations. Within 2 years, they may be able to reach our colonies." Dara paused. "Counselor, I have studied human history extensively. Do you know what I found?" "Tell me." "Va. Endless, constant va. They have been fighting each other since before they could write. They have developed weapons specifically designed to kill other humans. They have refined the art of warfare to a degree that no other species in our records has ever approached." Dara's voice dropped. "Counselor, we are not fighting a primitive species. We are fighting the most experienced warriors in the galaxy. They simply never had anyone else to fight until now." Mira stood and walked to her window. Outside, the Dominion capital stretched to the horizon. Billions of citizens going about their lives, secure in the knowledge that the Empire would protect them. They had no idea that somewhere across the galaxy, a small blue planet was threatening everything they knew. "What do you recommend?" she asked. "Negotiation," Dara said immediately. "We have never negotiated from a position of anything other than total dominance. But if we wait much longer, we will be negotiating from a position of weakness. The Council will never agree. Negotiation implies that we might lose. The Dominion does not lose. Then we must change the Dominion's mind. Mira turned back to her. You are suggesting that 12,000 years of policy should be abandoned because of one species. I am suggesting, Dara said carefully, that 12,000 years of policy was built on the assumption that we would never encounter a species like this. That assumption was wrong. If we do not adapt, we will die. The word hung in the air. Adapt. It was what the humans did better than anyone. It was what the Dominion had forgotten how to do. Mira sat down heavily. Draft a proposal. I will present it to the Council. They will reject it. Probably. But I want it on record that someone tried. She looked at the report again. 200,000 dead. Dara, in all your research, did you find any weakness? Anything we can exploit? Dara was quiet for a moment. They love Counselor. They form bonds with each other, with animals, with ideas. They will die for these bonds without hesitation. She paused. We could use that against them. We could threaten what they love. Would it work? No. Dara shook her head. It would make them angry. And Counselor, we do not want to see what humans do when they are angry. Mira dismissed her with a wave. Alone in her office, she looked up at the stars and wondered how everything had gone so wrong. The Dominion of Eternal Stars, the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known, was afraid, and fear, she knew, was just the beginning. 2 years after first contact, Admiral Priya Sharma stood in a hidden bunker 3 kilometers beneath the Himalayan mountains and looked at something that should not exist. The ship was ugly. It was rough. It was held together by welding and hope, and the stubborn refusal of humanity to accept defeat. And it was beautiful. She is ready, said Chief Engineer Naveen, wiping grease from his hands. The engines are stable. The weapons are online. She will fly. Priya touched the cold metal of the hull. 2 years ago, she had been a submarine commander in the Indian Navy. Now she was about to lead humanity's first true warship into battle against an empire that had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. How many volunteers? She asked. More than we can take. We had to turn away 10,000 people. Naveen smiled sadly. Everyone wants to be on the first ship. The ship was called Defiance. It was built from stolen Dominion technology, human engineering, and 2 years of desperate work by scientists and soldiers who refused to give up. It was not as fast as Dominion vessels. It was not as powerful, but it was theirs around Earth, hidden in asteroid belts and lunar craters. 300 more ships waited. Most were converted cargo vessels and mining ships. Some were little more than engines strapped to weapons platforms. All of them were crewed by volunteers who knew they might not come home. Today, humanity stopped running. Today, humanity attacked. The target was Outpost 77, a Dominion supply station 3 light years from Earth. Intelligence said it held fuel, weapons, and food for the occupation forces. Taking it would not win the war, but it would send a message. Priya boarded the Defiance and took her seat on the bridge. Around her, her crew made final preparations. They were young and old, men and women from every nation on Earth. They had trained together for 6 months. They had become family. All ships report ready, her communications officer said. Priya opened a channel to the fleet. This is Admiral Sharma. 2 years ago, they came to our home. They told us to surrender. They told us to kneel. They told us we were nothing. She paused. Today we show them who we are. Today we take the war to their doorstep. Today we prove that humanity will never kneel. The fleet jumped. Outpost 77 was defended by 50 Dominion warships. The garrison commander, a veteran named Corinne, saw the human fleet emerge from faster-than-light travel and laughed. 300 primitive ships against his forces? This would be easy. He stopped laughing when the shooting started. The human ships fought like nothing Corinne had ever seen. They did not maintain formations. They did not follow standard combat doctrine. They swarmed around his vessels like angry insects, hitting weak points, drawing fire away from damaged allies, sacrificing themselves to protect others. One human ship, its hull cracked and burning, rammed directly into Corinne's flagship. The crew had evacuated seconds before impact. They had turned their own vessel into a weapon. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, Outpost 77 belonged to humanity. The cost was terrible. 112 ships destroyed. Over 8,000 human lives lost. But they had won. Priya walked through the captured station, past Dominion prisoners who stared at her with fear and confusion. She found the communications center and activated a broadcast to every Dominion frequency she could reach. This is Admiral Priya Sharma of the United Earth Forces. We have taken Outpost 77. We have proven that your empire can bleed. We have proven that your ships can burn. She leaned toward the camera. We are coming, not for conquest, not for revenge. We are coming because every species in this galaxy deserves to be free. And we will not stop until they are. She ended the transmission. Within hours, the news had spread across Dominion space. Outpost 77 had fallen. Humans had done the impossible. And on 17 different worlds, species that had been conquered for thousands of years heard the message and remembered what hope felt like. Rebellions began within the week. The Dominion of Eternal Stars had spent 12,000 years building an empire on fear. Now that foundation was cracking. And through the cracks, something new was growing. Priya looked out at the stars from the observation deck of the captured station. Somewhere out there, more battles waited. More sacrifices would be needed. More lives would be lost. But humanity was no longer alone. And together, they were going to change everything. 5 years after first contact, the Dominion of Eternal Stars was dying. Intelligence Officer Dara knew this because she had written the report that said so. She held the data tablet in her hands as she walked through corridors that felt like tombs. Officials passed her without speaking. Soldiers stood at their posts with empty eyes. The air itself seemed heavy with defeat. The numbers did not lie. 83 star systems had declared independence. The economy had collapsed when subject species stopped paying tribute. Military recruitment had fallen by 60% because young Dominion citizens no longer believed in victory. The empire that had ruled for 12,000 years was watching itself disappear. And it was all because of one small planet that had refused to kneel. Dara entered Counselor Mira's office and found her standing at the window, staring at nothing. The older woman looked like she had aged 20 years in the past 5. Her uniform hung loose on her frame. Her eyes carried the weight of an empire's failure. I have the final analysis, Dara said. I know what it says. Mira did not turn around. We cannot win. We could never win. Not because they are stronger, but because they changed the rules of the game. Dara set the tablet on the desk. The report also contains a recommendation. Let me guess. Surrender. Negotiation. There is still a difference. Mira finally turned. Is there? We have spent 12,000 years teaching the galaxy that the Dominion does not negotiate, that the Dominion only commands. What credibility would we have if we went to these humans with our hands open instead of our weapons drawn? None, Dara admitted. But we would have survival. The silence stretched between them. Through the window, ships moved across the darkening sky. Once they would have been warships heading to conquer new worlds. Now, they were transports evacuating citizens from colonies that could no longer be defended. I have made contact with human leadership, Mira said quietly. Secretly, against the wishes of half the council. Dara felt her heart skip. And they do not want to destroy us. Mira laughed, but there was no humor in it. Can you believe that? After everything we did to their world, after all the death and suffering we caused, they do not want revenge. They want peace. That seems unlikely. I thought so too. So I asked their Admiral Sharma directly. Do you know what she said? Mira's voice cracked slightly. She said that destruction is easy. Any fool can burn things down. The hard work is building something better. She said that humanity did not fight us for 5 years just to become the next empire. Dara processed this. In all her studies of human history, she had seen their capacity for violence, their wars, their atrocities, but she had also seen something else, their ability to forgive, their desire to move forward, their stubborn belief that tomorrow could be better than today. What do they want from us? She asked. Change. They want us to become partners instead of masters. They want the Dominion to transform into something new, something that rules through cooperation instead of fear. Mira sat down heavily. They are offering us a chance to survive. They are offering us redemption. The Council will never accept. The Council is planning a coup. Mira's voice was flat. Admiral Roshan and his faction want to use the silence weapons. They want to destroy Earth completely, even if it means killing billions. Dara felt ice in her blood. The silence weapons were forbidden. They had not been used in 8,000 years because their horror was too great even for the Dominion. They did not just kill worlds. They erased them. Every living thing, every structure, every trace of existence simply gone. They cannot, she whispered. The humans will retaliate. The rebellion will spread. It would be the end of everything. Yes, which is why I need you to stop them. Dara stared at her superior. Ow! The humans need to know what is coming. They need time to prepare, to evacuate, to find a defense. Mira held out a data chip. This contains everything. Roshan's plans, the weapon specifications, the launch codes. Take it to the humans. That is treason. That is survival. Mira pressed the chip into Dara's hand. The Dominion I served is already dead. It died the moment we met a species we could not conquer. All that remains is deciding what comes next. She closed Dara's fingers around the chip. Go. Save what can be saved. Dara looked at the chip, then at the woman who had been her mentor for 30 years. What will happen to you? That does not matter. Mira managed a small smile. What matters is that something survives. Something better. Go, Dara, before it is too late. Dara went point 3 days later. A small Dominion shuttle appeared at the edge of human-controlled space, broadcasting surrender codes and requesting asylum. Its pilot carried information that would change the course of the war. The coup never happened. The silence weapons remained unfired. And in the ashes of an empire's ambitions, the first seeds of peace began to grow. 7 years after first contact, the Treaty of Seoul was signed in a space station orbiting Earth's moon. Representatives from 112 species gathered in a hall that humans had built specifically for this moment. The walls were transparent, and through them, everyone could see the blue planet below, the world that had changed everything. Dara stood among the human delegation, wearing a uniform that carried no Dominion symbols. She had spent 2 years helping humans understand her people, helping her people understand what peace could mean. It had been the hardest work of her life. It had also been the most meaningful. Beside her, Admiral Priya Sharma watched the proceedings with quiet satisfaction. She was older now, her hair touched with gray, her face carrying the weight of too many funerals. But her eyes still held that fire that Dara had come to recognize as uniquely human. The refusal to accept defeat, the stubborn belief in better days. High Counselor Mira stood at the central podium. She had survived the coup attempt. She had spent the past 2 years dismantling everything she had once built. Today, she would finish the work. For 12,000 years, Mira began. The dominion of eternal stars ruled through fear. We told ourselves that this was strength. We told ourselves that conquered species were grateful for our order, our stability, our protection. She paused. We were wrong. The hall was silent. Representatives from dozens of species listened. Many of them had ancestors who had been enslaved by the Dominion. Many of them had lost family members to Dominion armies. All of them had come here today because they believed tomorrow could be different. 7 years ago, we met a species that showed us another way. They did not defeat us through superior weapons or greater numbers. They defeated us by refusing to become what we were. They fought for freedom, not conquest. They offered partnership, not submission. Mira looked at the human delegation. They showed us that strength is not measured by how many you can force to kneel. It is measured by how many choose to stand beside you. She lifted a document, the physical copy of the treaty. Old-fashioned, the humans had insisted. Important things should be written down in ways that cannot be erased. Today, the dominion of eternal stars ends. In its place, we establish the Galactic Federation, a union of equals, a partnership of choice, a promise that no species will ever again be conquered simply because they are weaker. She signed the document and stepped back. The future begins now. One by one, Representatives came forward to add their signatures. Admiral Sharma signed for Earth. Dara signed as witness. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years stood together and agreed to try something new. After the ceremony, Priya and Dara walked to an observation deck away from the crowds. Earth hung below them, impossibly beautiful, impossibly small. I never thought I would see this day, Dara admitted. Neither did I. Priya leaned against the railing. When they first arrived, when they told us to surrender, I thought it was the end of everything. I thought we would fight and die and be forgotten. Instead, you changed the galaxy. No, we just reminded the galaxy of something it had forgotten. Priya looked at her. Every species wants to be free, Dara. Every species wants to choose their own path. The Dominion spent 12,000 years trying to crush that desire. It cannot be crushed. It can only be buried for a while. And humans dug it up again. Something like that. They watched Earth turn slowly below them. On its surface, 7 billion humans were celebrating. In space stations and colony ships across the system, former enemies were learning to become friends. Across the galaxy, species that had lived in fear were taking their first steps toward independence. What happens now? Dara asked. The hard part. Priya smiled. Building something is always harder than destroying something. There will be conflicts, disagreements, old wounds that take generations to heal. But we will face them together. You truly believe it can work? I believe that we have to try. I believe that the alternative is too terrible to accept. Priya turned to face her. When I was young, my grandmother told me a story. She said that every morning the sun has a choice. It can refuse to rise, and the world will stay in darkness forever. Or it can choose to shine, even though it knows that night will come again. She looked back at Earth. The sun always chooses to shine, Dara, because hope is not about knowing that darkness will never return. It is about believing that light is worth fighting for. A notification chimed. The formal banquet was beginning. Dignitaries from 100 worlds were waiting to toast the future. Dara hesitated. Admiral, may I ask you something? Of course. What do humans want from all this? Truly, you could have demanded tribute. You could have built your own empire. Instead, you gave freedom to species that were your enemies. Why? Priya was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled, and it was the most human expression Dara had ever seen. Because we know what it feels like to be alone in the dark, afraid of what might come. And we decided that if we ever had the power to light a candle, we would. She offered her hand. Come on, the future is waiting. Together, a human and a former enemy walked toward whatever came next. Behind them, Earth turned slowly in the light of its sun, and across the galaxy, for the first time in 12,000 years, the stars shone on a universe that was finally free.